Hello everyone, this is Nick Cruz from Sky, and I'd like to take a moment to just welcome you to our December webinar, and thank you for sharing some time with us. Definitely appreciate having you on the call. We are excited to share some more info on SkyVisualEditor and walk through some stuff in detail for you on this call. We do have the time planned for about a half an hour, so we're going to go through quite a bit of stuff pretty quickly, but please reach out and let us know after the webinar if there's anything we can elaborate on in more detail. We will make the recording available, so you know, afterwards on our resources page on our website. We will also have a Q&A session after the main demo, the main demos that we plan to go over. So for that Q&A, we do plan on utilizing the chat pane in GoToMeeting. So if you notice in your GoToMeeting panel, there is a chat feature. So any questions that you have, please type those in that chat panel, and then if necessary, we can talk directly live during that Q&A to address detailed questions. But without any further ado, I'd like to just briefly present the agenda. So again, I'm Nick Cruz in business development here at Sky. We are planning on a 30-minute demonstration, starting with walking through our wizard template in SkyVisualEditor, which is a helpful utility to kind of give an alternate to Visual Flow for Salesforce. So Tony will be walking through that, as well as presenting some of the new features that we are planning on releasing in our upcoming SkyVisualEditor version 3.6. So we are still in beta, and Tony may have a little more information on that, but we are still in beta on that, but we are anticipating release and that going GA sometime, hopefully in the next 1 month to 2 months at most. So please stay tuned for more information as we get closer to that release. But wanted to give just a quick recap of some of the awesome features that we're adding. We're not going to cover all of these in this webinar, as we've kind of gone over some of those in previous calls, but we do plan on releasing the Visualforce import capabilities, so you can take some older Visualforce pages, upload those to work with in the studio, and redeploy new pages. The things that we're going to focus more on today, as far as new features during that portion of the webinar, will be the code block component that will allow you to add code to certain page blocks. The inline editing feature, which we're excited about, to bring inline editing to pages created with SkyVisualEditor, as well as dynamic table filtering and table search and object searching as well. So those are some of the things that Tony will talk about in more detail. But without any further ado, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Tony Nelson, and he'll go ahead and proceed with the demonstrations.
All right, perfect. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. All right, so picking up where I think I left off, the wizard template is kind of our alternative to the visual workflow that Salesforce offers. So we're basically going to be able to use our platform to bypass a lot of the native restrictions that exist in that functionality that they have released. So things like being able to create really complex logic while using Visualforce pages to create the very rich environment that you need, or in the future even being able to leverage the Lightning inside of these different areas, is all going to be something that our wizard functionality is going to be able to accomplish. So what we're looking at here is an account page, and on this account page I have a section for the opportunities. So if I wanted my user, when they click the new opportunity button, to be taken into a wizard template, they shouldn't have to understand how the back-end processing works. If you think about this from a user perspective, the only thing they care about is entering the data that's on the screen. So from a UI perspective, we need to make this very intuitive and simple for them to leverage this wizard, so that as they transition from one screen to the next, they know exactly what they're meant to do on that screen and can fill in the appropriate data. Then on the back end of things, we can configure the page to evaluate the information they've typed in and then appropriately direct them to the next portion of the wizard. So What we have here is just a basic new opportunity page, and as I click the next and back button, it will traverse me through the wizard as appropriate. Then what we're looking at here is what we call a summary screen. So if there's no intermediate steps, it will take the user to a final summary screen where it can ask you, are you sure that you want to commit this record? And it kind of gives the user one last checkpoint for all of the different screens they might have transitioned through. So we're going to recreate this inside of SkyVisualEditor. So for those of you who have never used SkyVisualEditor before, there are kind of two different mechanisms that are involved with our platform. There is the App Exchange package that you download inside of Salesforce, and that's going to be all of the license controls and all of the Apex classes that we use to reference some of the different technology that are inside of our pages. And then we have the actual design environment. The design environment is not inside of Salesforce, so it's at SkyVisualEditor.com. You can go there, sign up for a design studio, and begin creating all the pages that you need. So I've already logged into the platform, and this is what it looks like. On the left-hand side, you have all the different fields and components that are used to make visual changes. On the right-hand side, you have all the various properties that are going to be necessary when selecting a different component. You need to change the properties instead of coding things out. Then the center of the screen is going to be where we actually manage the wizard itself, or the appropriate Visual Force page depending on the section of our tool that you're using. So to get to the wizard template, what you will do is go to File, click New, and then you'll be prompted with a series of templates or starting points inside of our platform. And if you scroll to the right, this is going to be item number 7 out of 8. Or you scroll to the left 2 and get there. And what this wizard will allow you to do is choose a foundation object that the entire wizard is going to revolve around. So in this case, we want this to be the opportunity, since that's the one that we had shown in the previous example. Give it an appropriate name. I would highly recommend naming your pages something that makes sense for your environment. And then if you happen to have a lot of apps that are inside of your org, it is also very beneficial to keep the SVE underscore abbreviation at the front so that you can figure out what Visual Force pages are being generated by our platform in case you just want to sort everything by the S listing or something like that. It's very simple to find everything and then give it the appropriate name. So just a tip on that. Go ahead and click OK, and what it's going to do is give you a blank environment to begin working with. Now our wizard will have 3 tabs on the right-hand side. The rest of the environment usually only has 2. This third tab is called the wizard tab on the right, and it's going to allow you to manage the pages that exist within the wizard. So as you can see on the right-hand side, there's a section that's blinking yellow. There are 3 different page types that you can add into a wizard. We're not going to have time to go into depth on how to use each of the 3 page types. There are other tutorials that we've created for those. There are other webinar series that you can go reference on our website that cover each of these individually. They are other sections of our platform that use these as standalone pages, and these pages are now simply being leveraged as one of many inside of a wizard. So to begin, the 3 different page types is the standard Salesforce layout. So this is a container-driven layout and is going to look and operate very similar to the standard Salesforce pages. Now there's some exceptions to the way that operates, such as we can bypass the 2-column restriction, we can add in tabs, things like that. But nonetheless, it is primarily container-driven, and that's the way you should think about it. So organizing things in logical blocks of information. Then there is the middle section, what's called our free layout. And this is when you want to deviate from the standard and you want to go totally custom. So if you are creating a page that needs to look like a document, this is a great example of a time to use a free layout. If you're creating a page that you want to have the same background as like, let's say like an Excel spreadsheet or as like a PowerPoint image, great time to use a free layout. It's just when you want something to look completely different than Salesforce. And then the third one is going to be the summary screen. And I'll actually use the summary screen in this one, but it's basically going to take all of the information that you put throughout the wizard and then aggregate all those fields and data tables into a single page for the user to verify. It's not required to use, but it is there in case you want to perform one last validation check before the user commits the data to Salesforce. So the next section that is unique to this area is the page list. So as we add pages, you will see them beginning to appear inside of the page list. And we will just add 2 pages, and then go ahead and edit these. So you can click on the little edit button, and it's now going to take you into that single page for you to begin editing. Now you're going to start with a blank canvas, so this is why I was mentioning whenever you're designing pages for the wizard, you want to make sure that it is functionally easy to follow, very intuitive for the user, and then you as an admin or as a developer should understand that all of the processing needs to happen and be done on the back end, not for the user to manage on the front end. So this means that we can select a section like Component 3, give it an appropriate title, let's say Opportunity Information, and then maybe we want to give it 3 columns instead of 2. So I can increase that on the columns property on the right-hand side to a 3, and we now have 3 columns at the top worth of information we can have inside of this wizard. So I can begin to put some of the required fields, let's say things like maybe stage, maybe we want to have the name of the opportunity and the amount inside of this first section, and then close date. Put that inside of here, and then we'll do close date inside of the middle one. You can design this however you'd like, and again, it's going to be completely up to you how you actually design these pages. And there are several componentry that you can use, so anything on the standard layout that is possible to use as a standalone page is going to be available within the wizard as well. So on the component tab on the left, we have a large number of components that are available to us, and then we have a large listing of custom components that our partners, our customers, our own staff has created that do things outside of the normal scope of what our platform does. A great example of that is if you want to leverage Google Maps inside of your environment, or if you wanted to manage something that was like a slideshow carousel, then we have different things that can retrieve images and display them as slideshows, things like that. And then other components down here that will allow you to create external links, signatures of some kind, static images, static text, etc. So once you get this information on the page and you design the page to look however you'd like, then the most important new things about this is the next and back button. So these are 2 buttons that are only available to the wizard itself, and the next button is probably the most powerful feature in terms of what the wizard offers that is different from our standard pages. Truth be told, you can do this with the standard pages. It's just the next button is going to be the most complicated thing to do if you choose not to use the wizard. So what this offers that is outside of the normal range of what our pages do is it allows you to create the destination page logic. Now what this will mean is we can say that when we open this property on the right-hand side, we can begin to add in complex logic as we see fit. So as we add in a condition, we can then say things like if the amount is greater than, let's say, $1,000, then we want to transition to page 2. Otherwise, transition to page 3 as an example. So we can then do this and say if the amount is, let's say, less than or equal to 1,000, then we want to transition to page 3, like I mentioned. And so page 3, when we create that, we can add that down here. So inside of this one, I'll go ahead and I'll transition this to page 2. And then for now, I'll leave this one as page 2. So what this is doing, let's delete this one for the time being. Change that back to a 1 and click OK. All right, so what we can do in this one is I will go ahead and edit page 2, and then I'll add in the third page as a summary screen and come back and finalize this wizard. So inside of page 2, I want to edit this, so I can go back to the wizard tab, find my page listing, and click the edit screen for page 2. So one important thing to understand about the wizard is whatever record you're viewing or creating, all of the information will hold and maintain itself as you transition these pages, which is very different from what Salesforce usually allows. Usually you have to pass the information with some kind of URL hacking or some kind of JavaScript variables that are stored and passed amongst the pages. We're going to do all of that for you. So if you open a record, we're going to understand what record is being viewed no matter what page you're looking at. You don't have to pass the IDs. You don't have to pass variables back and forth between pages. We do all of that for you. You can just make it really, really simple and pass the information that's needed onto the page. So on this one, what I want to do is I want to add the related list to this page. So let's say that on this particular section, I want to have 2 related lists for the user to work with. this first one, I will choose the data table to go into, and let's say that we want this to be the different tasks that need to be added in for this particular opportunity. So I want the user to be able to add in tasks at the exact same time as creating an opportunity, and then I also want the user to be able to add in the opportunity products that are available to them. So go ahead and click OK, and then it's going to tell me all that information there. And now I can begin to add in the different fields for those two related lists. So I can go to the related list section of our platform on the left, choose which object I want to work with, and then we can begin to drag those fields onto the canvas for the user to create. So I'll choose, let's say, the status, we'll do the subject, and then the priority for the task. Keep it nice and simple. And then for the opportunity product, we'll just do, we'll do quantity, and then let's do sales price. Okay, so as we add all that in, we then need to say, we're going to leave this next button alone. Now what's going to happen is if you do not change the next button, it will sequentially take you to the next page that is in this page list. So as I leave the next button on page 2 alone, it is actually going to transition me to page 3 automatically. You don't have to configure that, it just does it. So if I add in page 3 and click Edit, you're now going to notice that it's going to bring in all of the information from the previous 2 pages that I created and display it here. Okay, so design your pages first, then create the summary screen if you plan on using that. So now I can go back and edit page 1, click the Next button, and for this one, remember I had the second logic where if it was less than or equal to $1,000 in the amount, I want to transition to page 3. So I can now click OK, and it's going to transition that user to that next section very seamlessly. Once you're done designing your pages, simply click File, Deploy, and send it out to your environment. Now the reason I'm getting this pop-up window is because we use a custom lookup or custom search functionality whenever you're looking for different products in our product list. So we have an advanced search that we have utilized. In case you're wondering what this is, you normally don't get that. And then you can go ahead and click OK, and we will deploy all of the Visualforce code and all the Apex code into your environment. And you're going to choose whether it's sandbox or production. So I will choose my sandbox and deploy it out. Now, what we're going to do is once it gets deployed, you've already seen how it functionally operates, so that will be the end of this first portion of the demo. And then I have a couple of minutes to show you the next upcoming feature set that is in version 3.6 of our platform. So there's a lot of changes that are coming. We won't certainly have time to cover a majority of them on today's call, so I'm just going to show you some of the highlights that are really they're not even necessarily massive, major changes, but they're things that if you have used our platform, you're like, man, I wish I could do this, or this would be really nice if you guys could do that. We've heard your request, and we have implemented a lot of these changes. So what we now can do is go into my other environment here, and this is our beta environment. If you are a current customer or in the process of signing contracts with us, we will offer, or you are able to gain access to our beta environment. If you'd like to get your hands on it, play around with it, see what's up and coming, and provide some feedback, we'd love to have you in that. Otherwise, we can do things on a special case-by-case basis, but for the most part, we try and reserve that right for purely our customer base. Now, what we've got here, we'll just go ahead and load page layout, but you'll notice that we do have new sections like importing in your own hand-coded Visualforce pages. That's going to be a pretty phenomenal feature. And this is one of the first things that we're going to talk through. In our previous version, what you had to do was select an object from that big list that you saw earlier. Now what we can do, you have the big list here, but I now can search for the object and filter things out. And this was something that was a really common request because we do display things and sort them by the API name. So when you have a large number of applications that are in your org, this list can get really big depending on how your other vendors add objects to your organization and how much custom stuff you have in the org. So this is a really nifty feature that we've added in. You can choose the record type, and we'll go ahead and click Open. Now once this is in place, actually, let me switch over to account. This will be a little bit easier. So if we go to, let's do the load, page layout, and we'll choose account. My apologies for that. There we go. So the reason I'm going to choose account is that I have an account record that I can pull up very quickly inside of this organization. So what we're going to show next is on the right-hand side, in order to enable inline editing, For those of you who aren't aware, our current pages do not offer inline editing. However, you are able to mix and match which fields can and cannot be edited. So that will still remain true. However, if you choose to have input-only or display-only combinations on the same screen, we've heard the request that we would like to be able to do inline editing the way Salesforce usually allows. So what you can do on the right-hand side, there's now a checkbox that's going to be in the page properties section where you can simply check this, and now we'll take care of all the inline editing for you. And it will functionally operate the exact same way it did whenever you were working with Salesforce in the past. So this means you simply double-click that area, and you now can inline edit that functionality. Likewise, that same kind of functionality will be given to you as an option. It is not enabled by default, but you do have the option whenever you're working with related list to allow that same kind of functionality. So if you want the user to be able to inline edit one of those, you now will be able to do that as well. Another common feature request that we've heard of is that people want to be able to filter through content based on the user dynamically searching. So I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but sometimes in our production environment we have accounts where we're working with very large companies, and we have sometimes 30, 40, 50, upwards to 120 or more contacts at a single company that we communicate with on a fairly regular basis. And so finding one individual inside of that list can be very troublesome sometimes. So what we now can offer is something called client-side filtering. So it's a checkbox whenever you select one of these tables, and it's now going to allow you as a user of the page to begin typing, and it will dynamically filter that related list to only show you the records that contain some value. Now the nice thing about this is we search all of the columns that are inside of this particular table. So if you begin to type a value, it's going to evaluate that across all fields and show you the ones that have or contain that information. So this could mean, as an example, if you're typing in like let's say JAN, it's going to search the name as well as maybe the month field if you have that as an actual pick list or something like that. So you may be able to find January and Jan the person based on that search criteria and very quickly filter out the content. This is also very helpful if you're looking through tasks or other related content like that. Then there is going to be the capability of sorting through the data based on viewing user. At other times, you may want to filter out, let's say, your task information. So we'll go ahead and add one of these onto the page. So if I add on a data table, and we say specifically that we would like our task to be shown, and we want the task to only show open values or open tasks that I have for this particular account. Today, that's a very painful thing to do with related list in Salesforce. With SkyVisualEditor, it's going to be a very simple process. So all you would do is you would add on the data table like we just did, and then go to the Where Clause section. And inside of here, you then can choose whether you're going to do your own SOQL queries or whether you're going to use the visual editing tool that we have. So in here, I can then say I only want this to be filtered based on, let's say, what's a good one? Maybe maybe account, and then you typically can go through and choose something like owner ID, and then say I only want to see the accounts or something like that whose owner ID is equal to user ID. Okay, now this is a special variable that we use inside of our Apex functionality, which is a part of our package that we will be deploying. So this is a part of our documentation that you'll be able to leverage, but whenever this is added in there, it's then going to sort it based on the viewing user's ID. So this is all you would have to add in as an administrator, and you now can filter everything out based on that viewing user. So once that's done, now all of these tasks will only be shown based on if I own the record or not. So that's a very basic walkthrough of what we've got. I guess in some of the really quick features that we have time for. There's also one last one. For those of you who are a little more advanced users, we do have sections of our tool that are very developer friendly. So if you've noticed, everything I've shown you today has not required any development. You don't have to know code. But for the development portions of people's business, there are certainly times whenever our platform can't cover all the bases. And you will need to go into the code to create something that's so proprietary to your business, there's never going to be anybody who can do that. So what we offer is now a functionality called a developer component. We have rebranded this to the code block. And in here you can come in and add in your own code as you see fit. And then this will allow you to basically see this code inside of our tool set, which is previously not possible. And so in here you actually can see your raw code and expand and contract those different code blocks. And then we'll display that code to you inside of the studio so that you can leverage this moving forward. So with that, I know I've gone a little bit over time. My apologies for having that technical issue at the very beginning. But I'm going to go ahead and open this up for Q&A for the last couple of minutes.